Rebecca Lucas-Roxburgh is from the Institute of Veterinary, Animal and Biomedical Sciences. Her presentation, Sex, Vaccines and Cancer. A round of applause for Rebecca.
Michael Douglas famously said sex, or more specifically oral sex, gave him cancer. The truth is, sex gave him human papillomavirus, or HPV. Human papillomavirus is responsible for 5% of all cancers internationally. That's 610,000 cases every year. Now, most of us know about HPV as the cause of cervical cancer, which is decreasing in developed countries because of screening and vaccination. However, these same countries are seeing more and more cases of oropharyngeal cancer. That's cancer of the base of tongue and the tonsils. These are increasingly seen in a younger patient who's a non-smoker and light drinker, and most cases are caused by HPV. In the United States, between the late 1980s and early 2000s, the incidence of HPV-positive oropharyngeal cancer more than doubled. Similar increases were seen in Sweden and Australia. But what about here in New Zealand? From cancer registry data, we knew there was 35 cases in 1996, but 126 cases in 2010. But we didn't know how many were HPV positive. So the aim of my research was to determine the prevalence of HPV positive oropharyngeal cancer here in New Zealand. I retrieved 267 specimens from labs throughout New Zealand from 3 time periods and tested them for HPV. 62% of cases were HPV positive in the late 90s, compared to 88% of cases in the most recent time period. An HPV positive patient was more likely to be under 60, and the disease was more common in males. 98.5% of HPV positive cases contained HPV-16. Now, this is good news. HPV-16 is included in the cervical cancer vaccine we routinely give to 12-year-olds. And these results highlight just how important that recent inclusion of boys into the vaccination schedule is. This means in the future, we can prevent almost all cases of this disease. But what about the rest of us who are too old for the vaccine? Well, that's where the second half of the PhD comes in. I'm collecting tonsillar brushings from current oropharyngeal cancer patients and looking at various lab tests and markers for the virus. I'm also getting each patient to fill in a questionnaire, which covers demographic information, lifestyle factors, sexual behaviours, a medical history, and if they experienced any symptoms before their diagnosis. There are still so many unanswered questions. Can we pick up the virus before there's cancer? Are some people more at risk than others? And is there a role for screening? Here in New Zealand, we will see over 100 new cases of this disease every year until those who are vaccinated reach middle age. We're talking about 3,000 new patients, and it's in this group my research can make a difference. Thank you.
Tell you what, Rebecca, I thought a bloody axolotl with a prolapse was the most disturbing thing I'd see today, medically related, but... Graham.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Again, I'll use my age as an excuse for escaping from this particular network of causality, which I think is a more serious observation that I'd like to make. It is a complex causal nexus that you've tried to address in this particular research, and I, for one, hadn't realised the increasing prevalence of this particular phenomenon. And the sooner we get to understand it, the better, as would be my view of it. The other thing that strikes me is interesting that your research has 2 pathways. The first pathway led you into the second pathway. And I think that second pathway is equally fascinating because it addresses one of the other issues that seems to be floating around in our public health domain. Should we vaccinate or shouldn't we? And I won't say which side of that equation I'm on, but you can probably guess because the vaccination that you've drawn attention to has potentially important significance for males. So that's a pathway that's going to be quite rewarding from addressing a significant emerging public health problem that probably not many New Zealanders are aware of. So I commend you for the effort that you're making. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Rebecca. Many of us, I suppose, will know someone who has suffered oropharyngeal cancer at some point in their lives. So therefore, for many of us, it's a striking issue and a striking illness. It's interesting to note that it is a significant percentage of all cancers But what I really like about your research is that you had to go back to young males, if you like, to find an answer and to find your research, but then you didn't stop. You thought, I'm going to translate all this for the next generation and find screening for the older patients who might be more at risk but less able to attract the sort of research that you would otherwise do. So I commend you for not stopping and seeing it in two spectrums. Thank you.
Rebecca Lucas-Roxburgh, thank you.